Among Australian cities, Sydney shines as the nation's crown jewel, home to one of the most beautiful harbors in the world, with its iconic Opera House and Harbour Bridge creating a picture-perfect postcard that draws millions of tourists every year. But behind this stunning facade lies a city in crisis, a place where the average family needs to earn over $260,000 a year just to afford a basic home, where workers spend more time stuck in traffic than with their families, an average of 71 minutes every single day. That's nearly 2 full weeks of your life spent in traffic. Every year, Sydney has now stretched so far that it takes 2 hours to drive from one end to the other. The city spans an incredible 12,000 square kilometers. That's nearly 10 times the size of London, but with just a third of its population. The sad truth? Sydney might be the most poorly planned major city in the developed world. Its beauty is a mask, hiding decades of planning disasters, missed opportunities, and decisions that have locked millions of people into a daily struggle just to live and work here. To understand how Sydney became such a mess, we need to go back to January 26, 1788, when the first fleet made what might be Australia's most consequential planning mistake. The original colonial plan designated Botany Bay as Sydney's location, but after just 3 days of inspection, Captain Arthur Phillip abandoned this site. His logbook showed two main concerns. The bay was too shallow for ships, and the soil was too sandy for farming. On January 21, 1788, he sailed north and discovered Sydney Cove, which measured just 3.2 kilometers in length. This quick decision had massive consequences. Historical records from 1788 show the local Gadigal people had established settlements in more suitable locations. Places like Pittwater, with its 18.4 square kilometers of sheltered waters, or Brisbane Water, which offered 16.7 square kilometers of developable flat land. The Aboriginal people had mapped these areas over 60,000 years, identifying water sources, fertile soil, and natural harbor protections. Instead, they chose a location hemmed in by geographical challenges. Sydney Cove was surrounded by 50-meter-high sandstone cliffs to the south, swampland to the west, where the CBD now stands, and rocky outcrops to the north. Early maps from 1800 show the first roads had to navigate grades of up to 30 degrees, far steeper than modern city planning allows. The Victorian era, from 1837 to 1901, saw Sydney's first major expansion. The population exploded from 35,000 to 481,830 people. But this growth happened with zero planning. Records from 1850 show streets were laid out by private developers who simply followed cattle tracks. The result? By 1900, Sydney had 69% less public space per person than Melbourne, which had adopted a planned grid system. Then came the post-White Hui boom, which turned Sydney's problems from fixable to permanent. Between 1945 and 1961, Sydney's population grew by 800,000 people, a 62% increase. Government records show that in 1948, city planners proposed a comprehensive development plan that would have created 5 satellite cities connected by railways. The cost? £4.5 million. It was rejected as too expensive. Instead, they chose the cheapest option, urban sprawl. From 1945 to 1960, Sydney's urban area expanded by 538 square kilometers, almost entirely through unplanned development. The Cumberland Plan of 1951 tried to establish a greenbelt to contain the city's growth. But by 1959, 47% of this protected land had already been rezoned for housing. If you look at Sydney from above, you'll quickly see why the city's early planning mistakes became such massive problems. Sydney is literally trapped between 3 unmovable walls: the Pacific Ocean to the east, the Blue Mountains to the west, and massive national parks to the north and south. This isn't just any barrier. We're talking about the Royal National Park, established in 1879, which spans 16,000 hectares to the south, and Ku-ring-gai Chase National Park taking up another 15,000 hectares to the north. Take Hong Kong, for example. When faced with limited space, they built upward. Hong Kong's population density is around 7,140 people per square kilometer. San Francisco, another city trapped by water and hills, manages 7,200 people per square kilometer. Even Vancouver, with its mountains and ocean, fits 5,700 people per square kilometer. Sydney? A mere 2,037 people per square kilometer. Instead of building up, Sydney decided to sprawl out into what little space it had left. The result? A city that stretches 50 kilometers from east to west, squeezing through a corridor between national parks and mountains that gets as narrow as 30 kilometers at some points. To put this in perspective, You could fit 4 Singapores in the space Sydney takes up, yet Singapore houses almost twice Sydney's population. These natural barriers created what planners call a bottleneck effect. As Sydney grew, all major transportation routes had to squeeze through these narrow corridors. There's simply nowhere else to put them. That's why when one major road has a problem, the entire city feels it. In 2021, a single accident on the Harbour Bridge caused traffic chaos that lasted over 8 hours and affected more than 100,000 commuters. The mountains aren't just any hills either. The Blue Mountains rise sharply, creating what engineers call a hard barrier, meaning it's extremely expensive and difficult to build through them. While other cities might be able to expand in all directions, Sydney can only grow in very specific ways. This has led to some mind-boggling property prices. In 2023, land in Sydney's middle ring suburbs cost an average of $1,800 per square meter. That's 3 times what you'd pay in Melbourne's equivalent areas. And if you think these geographic constraints are bad now, just wait until you see how they've created what might be the world's worst transportation nightmare. Sydney has tried to fix this. Remember Parramatta? It was supposed to be Sydney's second CBD. The government poured $6.4 billion into development plans since 2015. The result? Parramatta has just 87,000 jobs. That's less than 1/5 of the main CBD. Compare that to London's Canary Wharf with 120,000 jobs, or Tokyo's Shinjuku with over 350,000 jobs. Other attempted business hubs tell the same story. Liverpool, 25,000 jobs. Penrith, 18,000 jobs. Blacktown, 22,000 jobs. Meanwhile, Tokyo has 8 major business districts, each with over 100,000 jobs. London has 4. Even Melbourne has managed to create 3 significant business hubs. The cost to workers? Massive. Sydney workers spend an average of $8,500 per year on commuting. That's 42% more than Melbourne workers and almost double what Brisbane workers pay. And it's not just money. Surveys show that 68% of Sydney workers report their long commutes negatively impact their family life and mental health. And while we're stuck with one overcrowded business district, this concentration of jobs is creating an environmental nightmare. The western suburbs alone produce 30% more carbon emissions per person than the eastern suburbs. And there's a simple reason why: all those cars stuck in traffic trying to reach the CBD. The air quality tells a devastating story. In 2023, Sydney had more than a month's worth of days where the air was too dangerous to breathe, 34 days where pollution exceeded national safety standards. But here's where it gets worse. 60% of these dangerous air days were recorded in Western Sydney, where all that traffic converges and gets trapped by our geography. When it comes to water management, Sydney is facing a crisis that would shock most residents. Every time we get heavy rain, over 2.2 billion liters of untreated sewage flows straight into Sydney Harbour. Our stormwater systems in Western Sydney are so overwhelmed, they're operating at 180% capacity. But perhaps the most visible environmental disaster is the heat. Penrith, out in Western Sydney, recorded a staggering 47 days above 35 degrees Celsius in 2023. That's 15 more extreme heat days than the coastal areas experienced. The reason? New developments are being built with just 10% tree cover, less than half of what experts say we need for a livable city. The true cost of Sydney's failures can't just be measured in dollars or degrees. It's written in the lives of its people. We've created a tale of 2 cities, the wealthy coastal east and the struggling west. And the numbers paint a brutal picture. A child born in Mosman, in Sydney's east, can expect to live 89 years. But born in Mount Druitt, that drops to 78 years. 11 years of life gone just because of your postcode. Think about that for a moment. We're not talking about different countries here. We're talking about the same city, just 50 kilometers apart. This division cuts even deeper into our next generation. Walk into a school in the eastern suburbs than one in the west, you'll see 2 different Sydneys. Eastern students are 3 times more likely to walk into a university. Their schools receive substantially more funding, better resources, more opportunities. But in the West, public schools struggle with 32% less funding per student. We're not just dividing our present, we're entrenching inequality for generations to come. The human cost is devastating. When you spend 2 hours commuting each day, can barely afford rent, and live in a concrete heat island, your health suffers. That's why Western Sydney residents report anxiety and depression rates 45% higher than the eastern suburbs. The stress isn't just in their minds, it's in their daily lives. Even the basic fabric of community is unraveling. The average Sydney resident now lives 23 kilometers from their closest family member. Neighborhood connections that took decades to build are breaking down. Community group membership has fallen by 40% in 2 decades. Why? Because people can't afford to live where they grew up. They're being pushed further and further out, away from family, friends, and the support networks they desperately need. The wealth gap is staggering. In 2023, the average household income in Vaucluse sat at $182,000 per year. Meanwhile, in Fairfield, families struggled with just $48,000. But here's what makes this even more shocking. Those Fairfield residents actually spend more of their income on basic needs. They pay 45% more for electricity, 30% more on transport, and a bigger chunk of their income on rent. The cultural heart of our city is stopping too. In the last decade, Sydney has lost something precious: its soul. We've lost 52% of our live music venues. The city that gave the world AC/DC and INXS can barely support a local band now. Property developers are turning cultural spaces into luxury apartments, while artists and musicians are being priced out. In 2023, nearly 3/4 of our creative professionals reported they can no longer afford to live here. We're not just losing buildings and venues, we're losing the very people who make Sydney vibrant and unique. So is it too late to fix Sydney? The problems are massive, but the solutions are actually pretty clear. What we lack isn't options, it's courage. Let's be real, Sydney needs radical change, not band-aid solutions. First, we need to break up the CBD's job monopoly. Cities like Tokyo and London have proved that multiple business districts work better than one. Every major suburb center, Parramatta, Liverpool, Penrith, Chatswood, needs to become a genuine job hub. The numbers make it obvious. If we could shift just 30% of CBD jobs to these centers, we'd slash average commute times by 40 minutes per day. That's 160 hours per year given back to every worker. Imagine what people could do with that extra time. Sydney can still be fixed. But it won't happen with half measures and empty promises. It needs bold action, real investment, and most importantly, it needs everyone to understand that we can't keep living like this. The choice is ours. We can keep watching Sydney become more unlivable, more unaffordable, and more unfair. Or we can learn from our mistakes, learn from other cities, and finally build the Sydney we all deserve. The question isn't, is it too late to fix Sydney? The real question is, are we finally ready to try?